Hello again, fifth graders. All right, this is the second part of the equivalent fractions lesson. So you need this second sheet right here. Look up at the top, it has a whole bunch of different fractions that are equivalent to 1/2. These are the ones that we listed on our previous page on page 3 that you put into your math journal. So we're just gonna be looking at fractions basically that are equal to 1/2, and we wanna discover how you can tell if a fraction's equal to 1/2. And I'd also want you to be able to look at a fraction and know if it is less than 1/2 or more than 1/2. So in looking at this, there are several examples here. These are the ones that you can easily see on your fraction bar diagram or on your number line. Now what I'd like you to do is list several more examples of fractions equivalent to 1/2. So if you wanted to press pause and think of some, if you're like, Mrs. Tremblay, I am not sure, I don't remember, I'll start listing out a few. I know that, let's see, 10 out of 20, 10 20ths, that's equal to 1/2. And let's see, maybe 8 16ths, yeah, that's equal to 1/2. I want to choose ones that aren't up here. 9 18ths, that equals 1/2. 50 out of 100, 50 hundredths, that equals 1/2. So try to list a few on your own. Okay, now in looking at these aren't on my fraction bar diagram, but I know that they're equivalent to 1/2. And we're gonna end up having some pretty big discussions in class. And if you missed today, we'll continue to talk about it and come back. So it'll be a big topic of conversation. Letter B says, how can you tell if a fraction is equal to 1/2? So take a look at all of these fractions that are equivalent to 1/2. And I want to see what you notice about the numerator compared to the denominator. So 10 out of 20, 8 out of 16, 9 18ths, 50 out of 100, 2 out of 4, 3 out of 6, 4 out of 8, 5 out of 10, 6 out of 12. How can you tell if a fraction is equal to 1/2? There's actually two main ways. I would say the most common way that people use is if you double the numerator and you get the denominator, then it's half, right? So doubling could mean 10 plus 10 or 10 times 2. So if I double 10, if I multiply my numerator by 2 and I get the denominator, that means it's equal to 1/2. So 10 times 2 is 20. That would mean I'd have 2 10s. And if you have 10 20ths and another 10 20ths, then you'd have 20 20ths, which would be a whole. So 10 would be half of that. So you can say, how can you tell if a fraction equals 1/2? If you multiply the numerator, NUM, by 2 and get the denominator. That's one way to tell. You could also tell by using the opposite, by using the inverse operation and dividing the denominator by 2. So if you divide the denominator by 2 and you get the numerator, that means that it's half. So 20 divided by 2 is 10. 16 divided by 2 is 8. 18 divided by 2 is 9. 100 divided by 2 is 50. So you could also use that inverse and divide the denominator instead of multiplying the numerator. Okay. Letter C says, list fractions greater than 1/2. How can you tell? So I'm going to give you some examples. Some fractions that would be greater than 1/2. Well, I could look at my fraction bar diagram. And if I look at this, I see, well, here's 1/2. I see 3/4. That's more, right? And if I follow this down, like, let's see, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7/8, that's more. So you can use this diagram. That would be fine. So I just said 3/4 is an example, 7/8 is an example. Let's see, I know that 5/6 would be an example. 7/8 would be an example. 9/10. Come up with your own. You can press pause if you need to. All of these fractions are greater than 1/2. And the way I can tell is if I divide my denominator by 2, what I get in my numerator spot is more than that. So, hang on one second. Sorry about that. I'm in the middle of cooking breakfast right now before heading off to work. I had to flip the eggs. So all of these right here, I just said, if you divide the numerator by 2, you get more than that as your numerator. So 4 divided by 2 is 2, right? I know that 2/4 would be equal to 1/2, so 3/4 is more than a half. For this one, my denominator is 8. 4/8 would be equal to 1/2. Having 7/8 is more than that. 3/6 would equal 1/2. 5 is more than 3. Half of 8 is 4, right? 7 is more than 4. And half of 10 is 5. 9 is more than 5. So how can you tell? Because the numerator is more than half of the denominator. That's a quick way to tell. And when I say half of, I mean you're dividing it by 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2. So 3 is more than 2. All right, the last little set here. List fractions less than 1/2. How can you tell? Okay, so fractions less than 1/2. You can look at your diagram here. And here's a half, right? Well, I can just follow this right down. 1/3, 1/4, 1/5, 1/6, 1/7, 1/8, all of those. So if you wanted to, you could look at your fraction bar diagram to list some. I'm just gonna go ahead and write a few down. I know that 1/4 is less than a half. 3/8 is less than a half. Let's see, how about 3/10, that's less than a half. 5/12, that's less than a half. How about one more? How about 49 out of 100? That would be less than a half. So when I see 1/4, I know that 1/2, if my denominator was 4, would be 2/4, right? So 1/4 is less than 2/4. For 3/8, I know if my denominator is 8, that half would be 4/8, right? My numerator would be half of my denominator, and 3 is less than 4. Half of 10 is 5, so 5/10 would be a half. 3/10 is less than 5/10. 6/12 would be a half. 5 is less than 6. And 50/100 would be a half, so 49 is less than that. So you can say here that you can tell when the numerator is less than half of the denominator. And that is how to tell. And we're going to be using this during some number talks eventually. This is just developing some benchmark fraction practice and some number sense around what these pieces will look like. So if you can identify if a fraction is equal to a half, more than a half, or less than a half, just by looking at it, you have achieved this goal. And if you didn't get it today, that just means you didn't get it yet. It will happen for you. Thanks for watching.